Welcome back, folks. This is another edition of Universal Disclosure, Meeting the Moment with Mike, active UAP field investigator in Southern California, my friend and co-host,
Reverend Stu in Melbourne, Australia.
Reverend Stu, why do you think that presidential level disclosure hasn't happened yet? That's sort of the biggest topic right now because there's been a lot of talk.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
A lot of talk recently about, it's going to happen and it doesn't ever seem to happen.
That's really interesting. Now, I'm not trying to be difficult here, Mike, but I'd like you to define presidential disclosure first, so I know exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, yes, a good point. So, in my opinion, I think yours too, UFO disclosure effectively has already happened. It just didn't happen the way people were expecting it to happen, and because everyone who's tuning into this and other channels are effectively part of the process, they maybe feel like it's not happened or not happening. So presidential level disclosure, the capital D disclosure, is when the president of the United States or another nation state comes forward and says to the people of the world, yes, this is true, we are not alone in the universe, etc., etc. So that's what I'm saying. Like the government has already admitted that they're real. They don't know what they are. So that was disclosure, but it wasn't the red carpet event that brings out the dead alien bodies in the spacecraft that people can touch. And I think that's really what a lot of people are waiting for. So there it is.
Okay, Mike. Now I see that as interesting. So I see them as two separate things. There's the level from which the announcement comes. What level of authority, and there's the depth or extent of the information. So, for example, the president might say, yes, we're not alone in the universe, full stop. And there's no real depth to that announcement. Well, what are the details, man? That might come later. I don't know, or he might try and tell us the whole thing, which would scare a whole lot of people off.
Why do you think it would scare a lot of people off?
Wow. Okay, well, first of all, that we're not alone. So people might go into fear about, what? Are these other beings hostile? Are they friendly? And why haven't we been told so far? Has it just been discovered? Is it being kept from us? There's so many questions that lead on from that. And then you've got the whole discussion about who are we in relation to them? It just gets so big, Mike.
Okay, yeah, I definitely get it. And that's, in a way, I think that's why it hasn't happened. Because I'm not convinced that, there's other podcasters out there too who are doing a lot more than just podcasting, and we'll probably touch upon that in a little bit. But I'm not convinced that many people have thought what happened, because everyone's so focused on getting the president of the U.S. to say it. Just say it. Come on, say it. But then what happens after that? Where do we go from that? What do you think is behind it? Like, we've got the physical crafts that's unquestionable that they exist. We've allegedly got biological bodies, whether they're alive or dead. But where do they come from, right? Are they from other worlds? Are they from other dimensions? Are they from other universes? There's a multiverse theory. And immediately, once the nuts and bolts thing is acknowledged, you automatically go right into what we've been talking about here for the past almost year, the spiritual and esoteric side of this.
Yeah, that's why the subject becomes so deep and so broad. So if the president was to say, yes, we're not alone, then he's just going to have to field so many more questions. And there's also this appeal to authority layer. So we're wanting someone in authority to tell us. We might not be a specialist. And once again, I'm not trying to be comical or silly here, but someone might argue, well, the current president isn't an expert on UFOs, so why is he talking about UFOs? We want to hear from an expert. You've got all these layers of complexity. Who on earth is an expert on this subject, Mike? We don't know.
That's what I was just going to say. There is really no expert. There's some people who have more knowledge about it than others, but that doesn't make them an expert, because there's so much we really don't know. I mean, there's things that I think that I know, but they might not be true. I don't, Um, so yeah, I mean,
Well, I see
yeah,
it in that kind of be careful what you wish for category. So if this is an esoteric spiritual journey, then that's always been an individual journey for people. So I guess, you come into that information when you're ready to encounter it, and often through direct personal experience. So that might be having an encounter with some interdimensional being. And that's the point that convinces you as an individual. I don't need the president to tell me it's real now because I've seen for myself. And
hmm
that point's always going to be there. Because even when, if the president comes forward and says, yes, this is real, what do you estimate is the percentage of people that will believe what he's saying and disbelieve? Now, listen, there's a partisan thing here, and I'm trying to avoid bringing this up, right? So, a president on one side is disbelieved. There's one crowd of people who are skeptical about everything that the opposite party's president says, as you know, let alone with a touchy subject like this.
Well, that's a good point too. At least in America, it would probably be like 50-50, no matter who says it, no matter what party they might belong to. It's probably going to be about 50-50 for what you just said. But I wonder, though, what would other people who are not in America think if that would happen? Like, is it also going to be split 50-50? I don't know the answer to that one.
Well, see, there's always going to be this question about why now, and I'd be asking the same thing. What's the motive? Well, I'm sorry to be skeptical like that, Mike, but I think a lot of people are, and I think it's healthy to be skeptical in this modern world. So, what's the motive? Why is this being announced now? Can you imagine the questions that the president would be asked after he says we're not alone? Why now? How long have you known this? What's going on? It'd just be, like, if I was the president, I'd be thinking, you know what? I'm just going to leave that to the next guy or
Yeah,
woman, by the way.
yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so when we started to broadcast this channel, I'm going to correct myself here, okay? Because I legitimately believed that we were. Um, I mean, I'm contradicting myself in addition to correcting myself. I legitimately believe that we were on the verge of the capital D presidential level disclosure because all the everything was lining up to be that. Um, so what I've observed recently is that the Congress or Senate, it's there's a lot going on right between the two different branches, but let's just say that the U.S. government at large has almost almost done an about face in a way, and that makes me wonder about what we're talking about right now. Like, and then you mentioned earlier that Tucker Carlson had got to a point where it's like, I've heard enough. I'm done. I don't don't want to hear anymore.
I remember,
Um,
yeah.
so could it be that these people did they then recently get information that is along the lines of what we're talking about, and then they were just like, oh, let's not let's not do this.
Yeah, because now I don't even talk about everything that I know and have experienced on this show
Well,
because,
likewise for me to an extent, but
yeah.
probably a lesser extent than what you're saying.
Yeah, so what I'm getting at there is like, I'm not even fully disclosing everything I've experienced in my life because of that kind of same dynamic. Because some of the stuff I'm still processing, some of the information and experience I'm still trying to integrate into my psyche, and it's not a simple thing. So I just say this, Mike. I, it is worthwhile dividing this into two levels. I realize as we're speaking. Level one is, are there entities out there, and have we retrieved craft or bodies? And then you can leave the whole esoteric layer up to other people. So I guess, and I'm thinking myself, I'm trying to put myself in the presidential position here. So I could take the approach of, this is what I can tell you. We're not alone. We've retrieved craft and bodies. So that's as much as I can tell you. And then if you want to go explore this deeper, I guess you can go on your own journey. And I'd still be asked a whole lot of questions as the president, I imagine. But you'd have to define a certain limit because what's the point in the president talking about esotericism and spirituality? How's that gonna help the conversation?
Well, exactly. That's not it's not the business the government's in, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it's the complete opposite. So it almost seems. I mean, I've been told by some smart people that disclosure is, it's a personal thing, and we're sort of documenting our own journeys with it right here, and other people are participating as well with us. And that's really what it is. It's an individual thing because what it means for me is different probably than what it means for you, and it's different for everybody out there listening a little bit differently. Everyone has their own sort of answer or key takeaway to that revelation.
Yeah, and there's this whole sort of extrapolation effect that happens where people just go on a tangent. They just fill in the gaps for themselves. Uh, I think you know what I'm talking about, Mike. They create whole sort of belief systems, even religious uh, organizations are based on this sort of thing. Maybe every religious organization is, as Jeff Kripal sort of alluded to one time, Professor Jeff Kripal. So it's very complicated to work out what's true and what's false. It's difficult to do that in my own life without any aliens involved. What's happening in my government? What's happening at my workplace? What's happening in my church? I mean, I kind of know. I've got the Stewart perspective, but that's only one part of the puzzle.
For sure. I mean, the sad truth is a lot of humans lie to each other. I don't quite know
Mm.
why, but they do. And then when you come to this topic, there is absolutely people out there who are intentionally putting out bullshit. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll just say it. And it's especially when you're first getting into the topic, it's tough to know who those folks might be, and is there a way to prove it, and this, that, and the other thing. So it's definitely, it's almost like navigating a minefield, right? There's certain people who will come out and say some really profound and interesting things, and then in the next sentence they'll say something that is just like, really, like, forget you altogether. Not gonna name names, but I know you know who I'm referring to.
Well, okay, yeah, there's some questionable characters about, and they've got an entertainment value. I'm not being sarcastic. Sometimes it might sound like I'm being a bit flippant or sarcastic, but I am entertained by some of those things, and I don't take them as gospel, so to speak. I just factor that into the equation because I'm used to this in the spiritual paradigm, Mike. All different traditions have different perspectives, and it's kind of dynamic. It's not fixed. It's changing and evolving as our psyche, our collective sort of psyche evolves, and that's part of the nature of this reality too. So I'm talking about the observer effect. We're basically creating what we are envisaging, but we don't realize that right now. That's why everything seems so malleable and flexible. And there are people in the world that understand this. And I'll put it on a simple level. If you put out the news that the stock market is going to crash in 3 days, so you better get your finances organized. You better get your investments sorted out because I've heard 100% certain that this is going to happen. Well, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can manipulate consciousness in that way. So that's an important thing too. And there's an opportunity to do that to our collective unconscious through this whole disclosure movement. So that's why it makes it sensitive as well. Because if some authority figure says, okay, here are the beings, this is where they're from, this is what they think, people are going to be already preloaded, already thinking that they know everything about this disclosure situation when maybe they don't. They've just heard from one person's perspective. So, say if you follow one religious path only, you'll get given that lens. Okay, Mike, this is exactly what happens after you die. This is what happens to you. You better be a good boy, otherwise you'll go here or you go there, and you'll enter the world with that framework. And I think there's a danger of the same thing happening with this disclosure.
Okay, those are some good points.
Well,
I mean,
it brings it back to a first-hand experience, basically, is what I'm saying. So trust your own
okay, well, yeah,
instinct.
well, with that, with the firsthand experiences, we know and we've heard or whatever that when you have them, it takes a lot to sort of reconcile them, and it can take months or even years for people to really come to grips or grasp with what it was or what happened or whatnot. And that's also why I'm hoping to continue focusing this. I'm calling it seasons, but I mean we're not. I don't know. It's I can explain that. I wanted to break off our conversations up to this point, and then because it's almost like volumes or a concept album or something, right?
Yeah.
Where we're going off way into the weeds right now with these other conversations, and but it needs to be done. So okay, what do I even mean by all of this babble? To For someone who's had an experience, it takes a long time for them to really understand it, and a lot of times, we've heard that they maybe wish that it didn't happen or whatnot. So this goes back to the folks that are wanting. Well, you said it very eloquently in a couple episodes ago about the people who are asking for this, governmental disclosure are really asking for, what was that again?
We're asking them to play the role of shaman or spiritual guide because that's what the information ultimately, from my point of view, is. So it's like going to the government and saying, "Can you teach me about who I am and what I am and reveal all the secrets to me?" I mean, it's not really their role. So that's why I was saying if I was the president, I'd stick to just the facts, or just a simple layer, external layer. Yes, we're not alone. We've retrieved craft, we've retrieved bodies. And look, that's not going to end the questions either. Okay, can we see them? Where are they? Let's have a look because, what technologies can we glean from this new information? The questions are not going to stop. They're just not going to stop.
Oh yeah. So it almost seems as though, okay, well, I think I started saying something earlier and then I didn't finish my thought. So, when we started doing this, I thought that we were really going to have that presidential disclosure, and maybe it happens. I would love to see it happen. Absolutely would. But as we have gone along, and just with this channel and with our conversations that we've had here, aside from all the stuff that each of us do outside of this, right? I have come to the personal conclusion that it's never ever going to happen, and this is why. It's because when you peel off the first layer, you're instantly like, "Whoa, that's not what I thought this was." Now, I'm not saying I know
Yeah.
for sure. I'm just postulating, but I'm pretty damn confident because we've talked to a bunch of people here, and there's other people we haven't talked to who have said things publicly, and you're right. It all points into this one direction, and it almost seems as though it should be, if it were to happen, right? And I do believe it should, that it would be like a concerted effort between multiple governments and multiple houses of worship, whatever you want to call them, right? Religions or whatever, simultaneously, like it potentially should be maybe a red carpet event of the United Nations, and in the big five churches are all there, and they're like, okay, yes, and then they have a conversation to sort of ease people through it or something. However, I've come up with a very wild idea that I don't know if it would work or not, but it sounds fun. And it would be for us, the people, independently, to just go around the government altogether. Why do we even need them? What do you think of
Yeah.
that?
Have you heard that expression before? If we lead, the leaders will follow. I've heard that a few times. If
Yeah.
we lead the whole thing, they'll be forced to follow along. Mike, you're probably aware from talking to people like Timothy Hogan and others that the churches and the religious organizations have been hiding information too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is some of the information is revealed incrementally to someone when they're ready. And I understand this even happens in indigenous tribes too. So they're not necessarily going to tell you everything until you go asking for it. So there's that layer. And then there's the second layer, which is some of the information they've become aware of, some of these religious groups bring into question, come into opposition to what they actually believe and what they're espousing. So they've got a problem there too. So there's a lot of information that's being held on to. I've become aware of some of it through people like Timothy Hogan and others, sort of moving in esoteric circles. But I even question that, Mike. See, that's why I was kind of primed for this whole UFO disclosure thing in a way because I've already been going down these pathways, trying to work out what's true and what's false. They say this reality is like a hall of mirrors because everything is us. So everything is just, it's kind of Jungian. Everything's been reflected back to us about ourselves. And so you might see, oh, look at that person over there. You realize that's really me. Look at that person over there, that's me too. And this is kind of the message that some of the ETs are talking about as well.
Yeah, I totally forgot to tell you. It was around Christmas time. I was wherever I was visiting family, right? And I had a dream that involved me outside someone's backyard, and there was, for lack of a better term, there was a UFO flying over, and I actually made AI. Maybe I'll put it up there. Made an image of it. It's not quite what I saw, but it was pretty close. It was this it was like a bunch of cubes all stacked together, and they were all mirrors, and it was just
Right.
floating along. And when I looked at that in my dream, I sort of I don't know whether it was telepathic or not because it was a dream, but the thought was like we are simply reflecting you back at you.
Yeah, that's it. See, that's one of the spiritual teachings, and I'm really leaning towards that. So you've got Jesus. There's a there's a section in the Bible where he says, "Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me," and it's very interesting. And then there's this whole fractal aspect to the reality where everything is ultimately one, and that's the message that I've been hearing through some of these contactees. So when I heard it, I was like, "Oh wow." I understand what they're telling me because I've already been down these pathways. And that's also why I realized there's a strong esoteric layer to this whole disclosure movement. And that's something that's got to come to you slowly. So I started out Catholic, and I was given that lens to view the world through. Then I moved to a Baptist church, and that was slightly different. Then I went to other more esoteric churches, and if you told me at the start you're going to end up sort of with sort of Gnostic leanings, I would have said no way, no way. That's so foreign. I don't even understand what that is. But then years down the track, that's where I've landed. Then I might continue. I might end up further along the path, or I don't know. But what I'm saying is, it's the same with disclosure. There are things that I believed at first I was skeptical about. So I saw the Disclosure Project, Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, which I think was in 2001. And as I was watching it for a long time into that presentation, I was wondering, is this a parody? Is this real? What am I even watching here? Because my mind didn't want to accept these numerous people coming forward, highly credentialed, telling me things that were just so foreign. Now, if I hadn't been exposed to that kind of information before that, so it was just out of the blue. So that's going to happen to people with disclosure too. There are people that this isn't even on their radar at all, Mike. I know we see it in the news because we're kind of hyper aware, but there are other people who have got absolutely no idea. So how shocking is it going to be for them?
Oh yeah, that's something I think I said many episodes ago too. Like I don't necessarily have a whole big pile of friends, right? But the ones that I do, even still today, a lot of them, I think, if I were to throw out a name of any of our guests that we've talked about that or talked with, they'd be like, "Who is that person? I never heard of them."
Yeah.
Well, the mainstream media doesn't cover the topic, which is why we're trying to do our small part, but we're also focusing on a very specific thing where the other channels for the most part are all like newsy kind of things, which is great because we do need that. So everyone sort of has their um, I don't know, lane or role or whatever it is in this thing. But I don't know, not to go all over the place, but earlier I talked about going around the government completely. Let's just sort of take it upon
Right.
ourselves as people. What I mean by that, and I'm 50 feet. Like I want to say it, but it's going to sound crazy. And I'm also open to either being someone who is facilitating in some way, or if somebody else wants to take it and run with it. But let's have an intergalactic or interstellar town hall meeting.
Yeah. He talked to me about that. Now that's very interesting because we recently had Tony Garzi on, who channeled the Mantis beings, and it's very interesting. I found that if I just remove all the layers of, who we were talking to, um, the channeler, the supposed entity and just listen to the information, judge by the fruits, so to speak. I came away highly impressed, Mike. Whoever that was, uh, imparting that information, it was very beautiful. So yeah, I'm interested in hearing from others of that kind. You've piqued my interest with that, Mike. I got to say, I'm interested in hearing from more of these intergalactic beings.
So yeah, so then the wild and crazy idea that I had a couple of days ago is I'm just going to put it out there, and if maybe I'll start working on it, and maybe like if there's other podcasters out there who want to join in or take the reins or whatever, but there's sort of a very specific way that I think that it would happen or should. But here's the premise: bringing together multiple channels, and I don't mean YouTube channels or podcasting channels. I talk about human channels who connect with these other beings, these other intelligences simultaneously, and then addressing all of the ET, non-human intelligence species or races or whatever you want to call them simultaneously, and directly asking them for intervention, because it's been said by a bunch of folks that there's, for lack of a better term, like this, I don't know, quasi-governmental structure in outer space where, like, yeah, you can check out the people of Earth, you can look at them, you can maybe nudge them a little bit, but you can't interfere. What if we ask for direct? I don't want to say interference, but direct. What's the word I'm looking for? Intervention. Because right now, I'm sure we could say this in every lifetime, but to me right now, we need ET more than ever. And what would it be like? Basically, like it would be a date that isn't published until after the fact, right? But we ask that these ships all, almost like an Independence Day movie style thing, without the violence, and they're only here for a little bit in key major cities where people can see them unquestionably, and almost force the issue in a way where if everyone's sort of looking up, how can you deny it? And then what happens? I don't know. That might be a bad thing, but I feel like it would probably be a good thing. I don't know if any of that made sense, because it's still sort of
No, it
percolating
does,
around.
Mike. Now, I don't mean to put a dampener on this, but you got this thing about the fake alien invasion possibility, Project Bluebeam, Dr. Carl Rosen talking about Warner von Braun warning that there's lots of lies coming up, and one of them being meteors, I think, and then
Being what?
one of them being meteor attacks.
Meteor attacks? What do you mean? Like
Okay, what do you
like
call
the
it?
aliens are like launching meteors at Earth?
It was all a bit. It was all, I don't know, like just different threats that the military-industrial complex needed greater budget for and more approval for to weaponize space.
I
So
didn't
she
I didn't
talked,
hear about those.
yeah, she talked about the different threats that were going to be rolled out, and one of them's the alien. The last card is the aliens attacking us. So there'll be people who have heard that information who'll be nervous if they see a whole lot of craft in the sky. There'll be people who think it's blue beam. It's just so complicated. It's just such a mess now. Though I don't know. I think it comes back to the individual's experience, like it always has.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're right, but part of me really wants to, um, I don't know, get really egotistical here and force it to happen. But no, I don't mean force it, right? Gently, but if we were to, and again, even if we were to bring all these channels together and we do address, as wild as it sounds, all of the ET races at once, or interdimensionals, whatever you want to call it, the NHIs, right? Would they even agree to it? I don't know. It could be that there is this, let's just call it a law, that you can't really mess with the humans. But then maybe there's a loophole unless the humans ask for it. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like we should test that out. And in a way, I mean, it would effectively prove it to everyone simultaneously.
I think you're right about that invitation thing, which I'm kind of wary of too. But if we're having our own experience, compartmentalized experience here as a human race on our planet, then we're trying to do our own thing, Like it's like someone coming to your house and saying, "Hey, why don't you move that sofa over there, Mike? And what are you watching on the TV? Why do you watch that nonsense? And it's like unless you've invited someone to come round and sort of participate in your experience, they're going to leave you to it, really.
Okay, yeah. Um, hmm. I don't know. I just think it would be pretty wild to try it and see what happens.
I'm open to it, Mike. I just,
But I don't know what the result would be at all.
well, I was talking more in terms of whether we need to issue an invitation or not. And I think that's a general rule of this experience we're having. So, along the metaphor I was just citing there, so you've got to be careful what you invite in because you can't necessarily get rid of it again. So, an open invitation is probably a little dangerous. I don't know. I'm aware to use a term like danger because I don't want to bring any level of fear to this experience, but I just want to be careful because if you've got people in situations with hauntings, poltergeists, and you'll see these layers are related to this UFO contact thing. I no doubt you've seen because people have encounters with beings, and then they some of these contactees move to other continents to try and stop it from happening, and they find out they're just being contacted in the new continent, in the new house, and some of the experiences they cite sound very much like poltergeist haunting experiences because I imagine in some instances they've invited these beings into their experience.
Okay. So, just to sort of, and then I don't know, maybe anyone who hears this is just going to think, we're wackies, right? But just to talk it out, there would be, I don't know, a specific way to go about doing it. Like, just sort of show up over specific cities for a short period of time, enough time for either folks or news to capture some really good footage, and
Yeah.
then go to a different city. And then, as the news starts percolating throughout the world, oh, look, UFOs over Moscow. Oh, UFOs are over Washington, or something. But it would be like, I don't know. Going back to these silly drones, like some people are
Yeah.
dead set that these drones are UFOs. I disagree respectfully, but what I mean by that is there are UFO or UAP sightings probably happening simultaneously with the drones, but I think the drones themselves are exactly that, drones, and potentially maybe it was a test to see how people would react. Maybe it was, oh my God, we're actually having these military sightings, so let's flood the skies with other stuff to take people's attention away. That's all fair game to me. But it is weird that we as Americans didn't know what they were. Nobody knew what they were, and then all of a sudden, the FAA is like, oh yeah, they were what do you call that, registered or authorized or something. It's like, oh, but you didn't know that before. You couldn't say it before. But even then, there's still nothing. Like, what does that even mean? Authorized. But okay, so now that I'm talking this out, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a good idea.
It's good. No, we're coming sort of back full circle to where we started with this conversation. I was talking about skepticism. So look at it this way, right? If that was the real deal, this is a hypothetical exploration here. That was ET. So look at it from that lens and look how we dismissed it, or it was fake. Okay, then who was trying to, I always look at motive. What's the motive of the government? What's the motive of the ETs? And I've got to tell you, Mike, every time I hear the phrase official story or official account, I immediately think it's a lie. Because when when has the official story ever been 100% truth? If someone will tell you, even in your workplace, listen, Mike, the official story is they left because they looked for another opportunity, but the real truth is they got caught doing this business, and the management told them, listen, if you just go quietly, you won't say anything. And that's what the official story is there for. It's a cover story.
Very true. Very true. All right. So what sounded like a great idea at first, I think I talked
Sorry,
myself
Mike.
out of that. But you know what? We'll still put it out there because I think it's interesting exercise to go through, right? Because like what we effectively just did without even knowing it was you and I, because we are so powerful, right? We're going to take upon literally universal disclosure and enforce it upon the world, and then we just talked ourselves out of it because it was probably not a good idea. So
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. And you wonder why it's not happening.
I'm enjoying this journey, okay? Now, I know I say that a lot. And when it happens slowly, I can deal with it. I can integrate it slowly, but I also don't want to be hit with everything all at once. I don't know that anyone wants to.
Well, I agree with that too. But the problem about that is the mainstream media needs to start taking this topic on and covering it more, because like we hear about it because as the robots do, like whatever news we click on, we're going to get more of that news, right? So the people who don't click on these things or watch or whatever, they're not getting anything. There's probably a boatload of people who don't even know that there were congressional hearings the past 2 years that started really strong and then sort of got really weird and typical.
Yeah.
So
that's a tricky one.
it's I don't know. I don't know what to say anymore.
Well, if we're becoming more loving, more balanced, more aware that we're all one, then that's just a win, Mike. Like, if the wars can abate in the world, if we can start sharing, I'm not talking about any political model here. So anyone listening, don't worry about that. I'm just talking about
Stuart wants a one world government.
Yes. Yeah, excellent. No, that not at all. I just want people to be nice to each other. Is it so hard?
But okay, so that goes back to why I was thinking about this intergalactic interstellar thing, right? And especially like maybe they don't go over the major cities. They just go over the war zones and the people who are fighting each other and killing each other. Holy what the hell is that? And then they stop in their tracks and they have to reassess everything. Like that's kind of, I don't know where it was ultimately the plan, right?
Well, we've discussed the Foo Fighters before, that were, and I don't mean the band.
Okay, yeah, all right. Good point. They didn't really do much, did they? We still kept bombing the crap out of each other.
Oh man, it's not an easy situation, is it, for anyone? I guess people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I kind of feel like we were all over the place, but I still kind of feel like we were focused in some way, and maybe presenting some ideas to people who hadn't considered them. Like there's a couple podcasts out there that I would love to ask questions to about like what we just talked about. Like, have y'all ever thought farther down the road other than, and again, I support it and want to see it, but if it should happen, the presidential level disclosure, like what happens next? What's the next step? And if we were to be able to say to you, proof undeniable, that this absolutely is more than physical, it's also esoteric and spiritual in nature, would you still continue to have the conversations and push it forward in the way that you are? I'd love to ask that to the some of the bigger channels. Have y'all considered that, and would it change your opinion?
Well, you might find this interesting, but in some of the churches I've been involved in esoteric groups, I've actually seen people get a little spooked and go running back to sort of mainstream churches or orthodoxy, because what they find is it's so open-ended. Some of the things I've been talking about during this discussion, we're all one. What you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me. And when that becomes real, and people start to realize who and what they are, it can be overwhelming. And that's an aspect of this ET contact too, them trying to tell us, expose us to the truth of who and what we really are. That comes up quite a bit, and that can scare people too.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the impossible, I don't know, the impossible question, right? Or the impossible mission or whatever. What's the right answer? Is there even a right answer? I don't know.
I think, see, that's why I've been saying about a soft disclosure, and I know that's annoying to some people, but
Well, I can make a good case that soft disclosure has been happening for at least the past 7 or 8 years, if not the last 80 years, really. I mean, we can go back to I don't remember if it's the 50s or the 60s, but that army guy, we find these things to be not of menace, and we can explain 95% of them. Okay, that means you can not explain 5% of them, and they're not of menace. So you just disclosed back then that they existed. You don't know what they are. We did it again in 2017. That may have been somewhere in between those two points. So it's happened a bunch of times. And it continues to happen. And I think we could rightfully say that in the past, decade-ish, or almost decade, that the topic has come a very, very long way, which is great. But I don't know if it's ever going to really be the way a lot of people seem to want it to be.
Yeah, maybe we're right on course and everything's happening exactly as it's supposed to happen, I guess we can sort of trust in the universe. I understand the impatience, it's like waiting for Christmas to turn up or something. You want to unwrap the presents and everything. I don't know. I just would advocate some caution.
Oh, I mean, in our last episode with the mantis, I don't even know that I personally don't want to call them mantis people anymore. I'll say mantis beings, right? But effectively, they revealed that they're not really a mantis. They just present themselves to us that way to get our attention and to see if we can, unconditionally love something that we perceive as ugly, effectively. And they confirmed that's basically what they do. Right? It's a mist of consciousness. But what they did say, and it made me chuckle, it was, how can you, the people of Earth, you say you want the day of disclosure, but yet you can't even get along with each other, but yet you want us to show up. And then they further said that there are physical beings around that, if they were to be showing up on your planet, would effectively scare the crap out of you just by the way that they look. And some people might think that it's superficial. I brought up the catfish show many episodes ago, and the problem, exactly the same thing that the mantises were talking about. Like, we can't love each other and we sort of look the same. What is it going to be like when these things do look nothing like us? And some people are like, oh, that's so superficial. Well, yeah, it is, but yet that's how the human brains are wired, unfortunately. I'm guilty of the same thing sometimes, right? But that it made me laugh. Like, you want us to show up, and from your perspective, we look ugly as sin. How's that going to go?
That's definitely a good observation, Mike, and definitely a tricky situation. See, that's another lesson that they're trying to teach us there too. And that's what I said before, that the information is really good and valuable and good things for us to ponder, regardless of, sometimes I remove who I think the information is coming from. So I've read some of the channeled books, The Law of One, I'm talking about that type of thing. And I've just removed the concern about which source is this coming from, and just tried to read it at face value. Like putting on a song, right? And having a listen. Does this sound good? I'm not even, for a minute, not even worrying about who made the song, where it's come from, who wrote it. Just having the experience. Because then I can assess the information without judgment.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've probably done the same thing too. There's a couple of channels that I've channelers that I've tuned into over the years, and I will say that it has sort of in a way changed my life, because the information that comes through is so freaking powerful, and it's a wisdom of the highest level that can't possibly come from any human. I mean, in my humble opinion, right?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Because see, if you make a rule for yourself, all channeling is evil, or it's all wrong, we shouldn't be listening to it, that's outside of our paradigm, then you're potentially missing out on some really profound information.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, from a humanistic perspective, control, fear. That's how you control the masses. And again, could some of these things or all of these things be bad or evil? Well, maybe, but I don't personally see evidence of that. And someone might say, well, the devil becomes your friend first or whatever. Well, the mantis also brought up a great point, like basically saying, yo guys, do you agree that we're more powerful than you're ever going to be? And don't you think if we wanted to eat you or kill you, we would have done it a long time ago? Like, that's basically one of the things that they said. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Yeah. I don't know that any being is ultimately more powerful than the other because we're all one, I think. But I still get the point you're making. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. Thanks. I'm glad that you tossed that out there. That's awesome. But yeah, just from the limited human perspective of how we view things and how yeah.
Yeah, through a fear lens. I know what you're saying too. Yeah. That's important to not be looking at things through a lens of fear.
And then, of course, the other aspect is, we apparently allegedly do have the craft. Maybe we've reverse engineered it. Maybe we haven't or whatever. But why do we always have to turn everything into a freaking weapon? Why can't we just be like, wow, this is beautiful. Look at all the cool stuff that we can do. Why does it always have to go to, like, it's so immature, childish. I mean, unfortunately, in a way, we have to be like that because there's other people, like, sort of like you said, the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If enough people think the same way, something will happen. But yeah,
it's hard to avoid here.
So, I gotta throw out one more thing too, because a friend of mine was watching the Mantis episode, and that episode did change me. Not like night and day, but it definitely invoked a change in me. But when they were hearing the Mantis say, "Well, until you can get along with yourselves and love each other, we're not going to show up," and he's like, "Oh," he instantly said, "Oh my God, it's never going to happen."
That's so good. Yeah, I get it. Wow,
man.
That's not easy. Mike, can we end this on some sort of positive note? I mean, I feel like there's been good information here, but it's also slight downer.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to have a powwow with you about, the various things. Like, we do have a 2-week delay. So I don't know. This is probably not going to be old news. I would be shocked if between now and the time it's released that something actually does happen. However, there's rumors of... we'll get to a positive note in a second, but there's rumors of Representative Luna making some big announcement. By the time this goes out, the announcement will already have been made, most likely. Whatever that is, we don't know. But there's instant speculation, and people are saying, well, is it about ETs or UFOs or aliens? And she responded basically saying it's bigger than aliens. And I'm thinking, what in the hell is bigger than aliens? Really?
Look, I want to ask you something, Mike. Seriously, through history, how many times has someone said, I'm going to make a huge announcement, and they subsequently have made a huge announcement? Almost never. It's normally a big nothing burger. Now, listen, I know I bring some skepticism here, and I even do about
everybody should.
Well, I even do about my own belief system. That's why my views have changed so much over the years because I've been skeptical, and I'm skeptical about what I bring a degree of skepticism about even what I believe in now. So, yeah, I am a little bit like this. So I don't want to sound like a downer, but I've heard NASA's going to make a big announcement about Mars. How many times have you heard that? Oh, this is so good. Where the life on Mars, what have they discovered? And that's always a nothing. There's some big whistleblowers coming forward. In the next 48 hours, you just wait. There's a big announcement from the president coming. It's huge. I don't know.
Well, yeah, announcing the announcement, right?
Jesus is coming back in 6 months, or whatever it is. All these cults have, just always make these announcements about, the end of the world, Mike. We've got a firm date on this one. And then some of the cults have even said, listen, we're a bit off with our calculations, but we've got the next date now, and that passes as well. I've seen it all.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a way, we were sort of guilty of that in our early days. We were putting out like little snippets of this is coming next week. This is our next week conversation. And we're a young channel, right? So at the time, it seemed like a good idea. Now I see that it didn't really do much. And there's probably more impact to just not saying like what our next episode is going to be and just dropping it. And it might be just us. It might be a guest. But somebody else somewhere recently said something that I thought was great because I was thinking the exact same thing. Basically what you said, like, don't say something like you're going to say next week something's going to happen. No, just drop it without any fanfare and let it be what it is. And I think that's great. So, and yeah, anytime, anyone's hyping anything up, with the exception of like a movie or something, because that's what you do with movies or documentaries, right?
Right.
But like with news, like news shouldn't be like, we're going to have news next week. Well, no, just give us the news now or wait until next week and put the news out, right?
That's right. Because also something can happen, like a whistleblower, Mike, I'm definitely coming forward in a week. And then we get 2 days close. Look, I've decided I'm not going to come forward because it's dangerous to my family. And yeah, which I respect, but then you're left with egg on your face because you told everyone we got this huge whistleblower coming forward. And then all of a sudden, no, they're not now.
Yeah, but okay, so to try to end this on a positive note, right? I think that as a humanity, we've come a long way in the past several years, and for us doing the conversations I've come quite a long way personally, and so that's a positive. And I hope that the people out there listening also are joining us on this journey. And like we're getting the comments here and there for people saying like, oh my gosh, thank you, this has really broadened my horizons, or whatever they say, like increase my perspective. And that is why we do this. We don't get paid to do this at all, but the point is, like you said it multiple times to me, like sort of off the air, like you consider this your part of your ministry.
I do, yeah.
And I consider this part of community service, because I've always sort of regularly done some type of community service, not because I was required to by law, but because I like to.
Well, see, the interesting thing for me, Mike, is you and I were both already on this journey separately, and it's a beautiful thing to do this together. And I'm honored to be able to speak directly to the guests and ask them questions that have been on my mind and questions that come up during the interview. I absolutely love it, Mike. So don't get the wrong impression from me. I do bring a skepticism, and I'm comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with a certain degree of skepticism. And I also see the funny side in things too. So I'm trying to bring a lighthearted attitude to it, but I'm absolutely along the ride here with you, Mike.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just to go back to our title real quick, Universal Disclosure, Meeting the Moment. Well, like a lot of thought went into that title because the idea here is, you and I and the people we talk to and the people who are listening, we are all effectively meeting the moment of disclosure on a personal level, and we're processing it on our own because that is what, in my humble opinion, what it is.
I'm finding it is exactly that way. I think you're spot on, Mike.
So, in any event, I guess that's going to be a wrap on this conversation. But we do have a couple of really great conversations already scheduled that are going to be coming out real soon.
Be careful there, Mike, with the announcements.
No, I'm not saying who, and I'm not saying what. I'm just saying we've got some really great things scheduled. So I just wanted to do like this, I don't know, it's not like a random episode, but it's just like because of the news is what it is. And I think a lot of people were expecting something to happen because there was other people like making predictions and predictions are never a good thing to do. But anyways.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I can predict that our show is going to continue. And we're going to be learning more things about ourselves and about our guests. So I definitely like that prediction. I'm comfortable to make that one, Mike.
All right, that's a great prediction. I will stand by that, and I will second that prediction that we will continue. So as we continue, as always, thank you for your comments, likes, subscribes, and shares. Please do keep them coming, and tell the robot that other people should hear these conversations as well. Until next time.
Much love from us at Universal Disclosure Podcast. Meeting the Moment. Take care.